Broadcasting live on the Double Wide Network. It's time for The Real Deal. Join the Ambassador and Danny Q as they put together great guests and honest commentary on a range of issues. But one of their main topics will be preserving Native American tributes in sports team nicknames. These two are also avid fans of music and the arts, and they'll always make time for a great song or two. Now, it's time for The Real Deal. And here are your hosts, the Ambassador and Danny Q.
Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to The Real Deal in beautiful downtown Scottsdale, Arizona on the Double Wide Network. And it's a little windy here today, isn't it, Danny? Say hi, Danny.
Hello.
And say hi, Cal.
How's it going, everyone?
Good. It's a little windy out here today. It normally doesn't get that windy, but it is. So I imagine it's really blowing up on the res. Anyway, we're going to have some interesting guests on tonight, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And I want to thank everybody that's listening. We're getting support literally from all over the United States and even internationally, because this is a radio show that goes worldwide, and we're getting a lot of listeners, a lot of listeners. So thank you for sharing, and keep it up. And if you like, I always say, if you like it, share it. If you really like it, consider being a sponsor, because I'm fronting this thing, and I'm not a billionaire like the opposition is. So with that being said, Danny, why don't you talk about what went on last week?
Well, we had the KTNN golf tournament ordeal. And that consisted of the Redskins.
Sure.
They came forth and put up $20,000 for Native American scholarships, and it was a really nice thing on their part.
And they didn't ask for anything. They didn't even ask to be, they could just keep it anonymous. It didn't matter. But it was very nice of them to do that. And KTNN, ladies and gentlemen, is the largest Native American radio station in the United States, and they're listening, and we want to thank them for listening. They've been following us, and it was a great golf tournament. It was the second annual, and it was here at the TPC in Scottsdale, Arizona, which is where they play the Phoenix Open, the big golf tournament here. And so we went out, and we had a good time, and Danny and I was there, and Mark Yellow Horse Beasley was there, and
the Beast.
Yeah, where is he? Anyway. And then there's a group of Navajos from Flagstaff that were there, and they were actually wearing their Redskins hat, and they played in the golf tournament for KTNN.
We see you've come with an Indian.
Yeah, yeah. And so we sat with them and had lunch, and it was very enjoyable. And Danny finally got to meet a lady that's very dear to me and a very important Navajo figure, and she was in the council. Her name is Catherine Benally, and Danny finally got to meet her. And
very nice lady.
Yeah, she's from up in Western Navajo, and how that conversation all got started is about 3 or 4 years ago. Peter McDonald, my Che, stays at my home in Paradise Valley here, and he happened to be at my home, and it was late at night, and we were sitting up talking, and I could tell he was worried about something, and he said, I'm really, I said, what's the matter, Che? And he says, I'm really concerned about the water rights issue that's going on right now, and I'd read about it, but I didn't know what it was really about, and so he started telling me, and what had happened was SRP, the Salt River Project here in Phoenix, who has a coal-fired power plant up on the Navajo Reservation in Page, Arizona, and it's on Navajo land, and it employs Navajos, and they use Navajo coal. that comes from Peabody over in Black Mesa. Senator Kyle, who recently retired from the Senate, is in being a politician. Of course, he was also a water rights lawyer, and for SRP, and so his firm represented SRP. So what he was doing was trying to push through a $300 million settlement with the tribe.
This is chump change, and
yeah, a $300 million settlement for Navajo and Hopi, right?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah, for Navajo and the Hopi Nation to sell their water rights, to buy their water rights from them.
But one of the crazy stipulations on this was that they would have to drop legal claims on all kinds of stuff that date back all the way to the Treaty of 1868 and things like that, stuff that they're still fighting for.
Yeah, and he was telling me this, and I says, I didn't know all that. And he said, yeah, he says, that's what's going on. And those guys, these lobbyists, they've hired a big lobbyist firm, and they're up there in Window Rock lobbying, and these guys were being paid millions of bucks to go lobby the tribal council to get this thing through before Kyle got out of office. And so he was really upset. He was worried about it, and he says, we can't be selling our water rights. He says, we'll sell we can sell water to people if they need it, like the city of Tucson or Phoenix or Las Vegas or whatever. But it just makes no sense to give up our water rights for $300 million. It's nothing because water is the future. And
I've heard over and over again that the next wars aren't going to be over fuel at all. It's going to be all water.
That's right. The next wars are going to be over water, folks. But anyway, so I heard him, and I said, I'll tell you what. I says, I'll help. And I says, I'll get Danny on the phone. And so I did. And I called Dan, and I says, we got to help. And I says, I want you to interview Peter and put the pen to the paper and start doing what you do, doing press releases about this. So that's what we did. And take it from there, Dan. What happened?
Well, we put out the press releases. The first one was simply just me introducing a statement from Peter. We manually blasted them out to different media outlets and things like that.
Including the Navajo Times.
Sure. And it got picked up. People actually paid attention. And this shoe-in of a deal, we added, I think, one or two more press releases.
Three total.
And we did the same things, and the word spread very fast. Meanwhile, Mrs. Benally was down there on the ground, fighting it from the streets, and we kind of fought it from the outside, and we flanked them. And they hired a big political damage PR firm who came out and said when it all came down to that Albuquerque Journal article, and a writer named Diane Schmidt had pointed out that the tribe hired these gentlemen to defend their position, and she wrote an article about that. Well, this PR firm said, well, look, Ms. Schmidt, they have a big PR wagon too.
Meaning us.
Yeah, and then what they did is they showed her my press releases, and so, basically insulting her journalist integrity. And she came to me and said, hey, what is your involvement in this? And I said, well, I just volunteered to write these up, and we blasted them out to people like your publication. And I was writing it from my garage and didn't even know how I was going to pay my rent next month. Yeah. And so these guys stuck their heads out trying to, spin the whole story.
There was a big $1 million PR firm on our side trying to shut this thing down.
Yeah, and they made fools of themselves because it was just me in my garage, and it was just a few phone calls with you and Peter, and I had to learn everything I could about these issues that were on the table as fast as I could, and we did it. And within maybe 2 months, a shoe-in deal
went south.
It just crumbled.
Yep, and once the Navajo people found out that it was, it was a total ripoff, they started really getting upset. And let me tell you, you get Navajos pissed off at you, buddy. That's not good.
It takes them a while.
And I can tell you that from firsthand, being an in-law up there. But anyway, they were physically going over to the president's office in Window Rock, and I was told this by several people, that they were physically going over there and raising holy hell, and I mean just raising hell with them. And he was literally, the politicians were literally running out the back door, like they did in Lancaster. They were literally running out the back door and getting in their cars and taking off. And it took a little while, and then they figured out, yeah, man, this is not good, and we're not going to take the heat. So it shut it down, and the lobbyists went home crying. And so
we came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
That's about right. But no, it was good. I felt really good about it, and Dan got to meet one of the there was four of us. There was Peter, Dan, myself, and Catherine Benally, and Dan got to meet her on Saturday.
Which was a huge honor. She's a longtime delegate.
Yeah, and I wish we should. I wasn't thinking, but we should have got a picture with her. Because she's really a class act lady, and she sticks up for her people.
And this relationship, with me, you, and Peter, kind of segues into what we're doing right now with the tributes to Native Americans in sports, and and we're not a couple guys with no lives. We have things to do, but our friends came to us kind of the same way that they came to us on that deal. And they said, well, what do we do? And we started just kind of observing, starting with the rally on October 12th at the football game. And we're basically doing what we did then. It's just taking longer, and it's a bigger battle. And it seems that the opposition is more entrenched, which is funny because, before we were talking about water rights, which is something that is a huge deal in Indian nations and even municipalities everywhere. And here we are fighting about football teams, and we're fighting against people trying to erase the native presence in the public eye. And for what? It's certainly not going to help anyone else from off Indian country to pay attention. And it's really sad that this is going on. One of the most divisive things, because I think if you took issues like water rights and you took some of the other social issues that are happening largely on a large scale in Indian country, larger scale than any other ethnicity in this country, sometimes thousands of percentages, maybe even compared to other ethnicities, you'd have everybody agreeing, I think.
Oh, yeah, you would.
I mean, that would be, if you disagreed with the problems there, the unemployment, the
drug abuse.
There's a lot of domestic violence and rape and things like that. Then you'd be a racist if you right. And anyone who deviated from that. And I wonder, if they'd get guys like Mike Wise to help them, because he isn't. You get guys like what's his name, McKenna out of Deadspin. He wouldn't be helping them on those issues. He never has, and he never will.
Yeah.
But here we are talking about football teams, and they're actually helping these people take themselves out of the public eye. Of course, the white guys will jump on for that.
Sure.
And spent all week yapping with these idiots on Twitter. The only thing they can say to you is that you're racist. They don't have any appeals except they take some event out of context and then say this means that the mascots are racist.
Right.
And I think a lot of people bow to that. I think a lot of people throw up their hands and say, well, I don't even want to touch that. I think that a lot of ways that's what the media does on this issue. And unfortunately, I just know that's not the truth. Our friends in Indian country know that's not the truth. Any poll that's ever been taken, except that phony one out of University of California, that has tricky wording on it shows that that's not the truth even to this day. It may have changed 10% one way or the other, but the truth is that most Native Americans support these. The people who are crumbling and caving in, they don't want to be called sellouts and traitors. They don't want to be chased down for going to a football game with their family and cheering for the wrong team and have their people call their kids names and tell them that they're backstabbing traitors.
That's where I draw the line. That really upsets me when I seen that happening at the Chiefs game and at the Redskins game, and then they deny it. Oh, we don't do that, and well, we never done anything like that. That's a bunch of BS. We seen you do it firsthand, you phonies. And I'll tell you, folks, what you need to really understand is everybody thinks, oh, it's just the Redskins. It's not the Redskins. They're going after all of them, and they've said that publicly. If they get the Redskins to go down, they're going after the Kansas City Chiefs. They're going after the Atlanta Braves. They're going after the Cleveland Indians. They're going after the Golden State Warriors. They're going after the Chicago Blackhawks. They're going after every damn one of them. So you need to understand that and share that with people, because that's what they've said. I mean, and they're making no bones about it.
I look what they did with Fighting Sioux.
Yeah,
what's wrong with Fighting Sioux?
Yeah,
I mean that's it's pretty straightforward. You're inciting the spirit out of pride,
right?
And most of the Sioux were against. Most of the Sioux were against the. Against that name change. A lot of the communities there even voted against the name change, and then the college crumbled, turned around and blamed it on the Sioux.
Yeah, and they're going to change it back. I really believe that. Just like we're going to get that school in Lancaster, New York, changed back. That's going to be the first school, folks, and we're going to be there the night it happens. And when we do, make note that we're going to go back to every one of them. It changed. We're going to research it, and we're going to go back, and we're going to make them change it back. And as long as I can stay on this radio show here, that's my goal, if I can keep going. So I guess with that being said, Dan, shall we get to our first guest?
Well, speaking of calling anyone racist who speaks out, against these name changers, the father of this thing is a billionaire.
And he's not an Indian.
He's not an Indian, and his name is Ray Halbritter, and he's out of New York. And
he's a thug,
and he's on a quest to do this social genocide movement because he wants Native people out of the public eye. But anyway, Tenny called him out on his spray tan, and we put that up on our Facebook page. What he looked like 10 years ago. He looks like a fat white guy from the city somewhere,
right?
And she called out his spray tan, and I mean the guy is orange, if and
he's got a Davy Crockett jacket,
right? And they said that's racist. Of course, Claudia Tenney is an assemblywoman out of New York, and she's been an advocate for a real Oneida man for a very long time. And Ray Halbritter's trying to steal that man's land. And she was on our first show, and we're so glad to have her back. Claudia, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you. I'm happy to be on. You guys are cracking me up. Just listening to you. Yeah. You cracked me up just describing Halbert.
Why don't you bring us up?
He's been calling me a racist for years. I mean, the minute I got even close to starting to figure out what was going on, anybody who challenges him, he throws the race card on. And it doesn't matter that he's an abusive bully who's violated the rights of his own family. There's a great video you can see online that he says, he who has the gold makes the rules. And that's after he took his sister, crowbarred her with federal officials, took her out of her trailer, stuck her in a jet, and put her in a jail in Pennsylvania. And talk about a violation of constitutional rights. I mean, he's willing to do anything. He's ruthless, and he doesn't care. This is all about money and power. And all I was doing was just pointing out when somebody gets so narcissistic and so vain that they have to alter their appearance to the extent that he has. I mean, honestly, I'm in Florida right now with a couple of people who, this woman is Canadian. She spent the last 50 years in Florida. She doesn't know who Ray Halbert is. She doesn't know anything about this issue. and I just showed her the before and after photo of Ray from 1998 and Ray today. And I said, look at this picture. What do you think of this guy? She goes, oh, my God. Plastic surgery, fake tan, and dyed hair. What else has he had done? She goes, I see the moles are missing from 1998. So I was just pointing out the vanity of this guy. I'm not against even guys. If you want to dye your hair or get a fake tan, that's one thing. But this guy is doing this to try to pull the wool over the eyes of a lot of people who don't know any better. They don't know the truth. He's masquerading as an Oneida because he's built these poor people out of all their money, use their tradition, their culture, and he threatens to really destroy, the proud heritage of the real Oneida people by doing this. And he's used Washington lobbyists, casino interests, corrupt politicians, and it's been a web of lies for many years. And I have spent thousands of hours trying to uncover this of my own time. I do it for free. In fact, it costs me money. But I love Melvin Phillips. He is an amazing guy. He's my hero. He's a tough guy. He's a national treasure. He's one of the last full-blooded Oneidas we have left. He's lived a hard life. He grew up as a discriminated person, as a Native American in our area. Those days, we're living a different world than you do in your area. I mean, the Indian culture is all but lost pretty much here. He's lived it. He was born with a slight disability that he survived. He literally was born barefoot, living in a house with a dirt floor, worked on a farm, sold cars, you name it. And he will not take a penny from Halberter. And he stands up to him. He makes no money, very little. He could literally live in a dirt hole in the ground because he doesn't care about money. He cares about integrity and this culture. And, this guy to me is the great Native American hero of our time, in our area anyway. So it's, that's why I do it. The guy is I don't actually legally represent him anymore. But I help any way I can. I advocate for him. I just love listening to him telling stories about his life and what he's been through and what he stands for and what his mother and his grandmother and all his family members have said, about preserving this little tiny plot of land. It's a little less than 100 acres in Verona, New York, and Ray Halberter's using the government to try to take it away from him. That's the summary, but he's a great guy. It's worth preserving and saving.
And we'd love to have him on the show. So if you can work that out,
I'm going to try to get him.
We're a platform for him
to. Next week or the week after, I'm going to go and catch up with him. He doesn't do anything. The middle of the week is perfect because he goes around. What he has is he does his little auction. He has an auction house, and it's really modest. It's neat as a pin and very clean. Every Saturday night he has a dollar auction, and he travels around and he buys surplus food, surplus items from places, and he sells it. And it's a reality TV show. He's just humorous and delightful. And I videotaped him a few times, but he gets uncomfortable. But he's really entertaining, super bright, wonderful guy. You guys I wish you could come meet him in person, to be honest with you. He's really, really charming. So.
Well, yeah, we'd love to have him on. He sounds like a cool guy. Well, we're going to come up there. Yeah, we're going to come up there someday.
Yeah, when you come up to Lancaster, you should come here. You should definitely come by and take a look.
How far are you from Lancaster?
Probably maybe 3 hours away.
Oh, that'd be cool. Yeah,
right on the thruway. It's the main ride. It's not that far. It might not even 3 hours maybe, but from his house probably not that far. But the whole thing with Halberter, he's just a fraud. And you mentioned that he's not Native. Like, what happened with me is I started helping Melvin Phillips out because he was worried about having his land taken from him. And he said, well, I don't think he's Oneida. He might have Indian blood, but he's definitely not Oneida. And this is, our statutes say that this land was a separate treaty. They were a separate band of Indians that were recognized in all the New York treaties. And so I started doing the research. I worked with another guy named Matt Moran who helped me. We went to the state archives, national archives to finally certify documents. We worked with the Mormon Church. And, Halberter put together his own hurry-up, self-made constitution, making him a dictator for life. And in that little constitution, it says that anyone in a leadership role in the United Tribe which he created, by the way, because he's not a land-based Oneida and of the where the land is. And he said you have to be 1/4 Oneida blood by matrilineal descent. Well, I went through and I found, first of all, if anything, he's 1/4 possibly Indian descent, but definitely not Oneida. And so he's ineligible to even be the leader of the tribe, which is why back in 1993, over the objection and the vote of the Oneida people, he was put in place temporarily as a seat warmer. And because of the money and the power and the inability of the real Oneidas to really object to him, he's been there ever since, and they don't have the resources to move against him.
What are some of the
stumbled upon this?
What are some of the things that you've heard of him doing to dissenters up there?
Oh, he's like forces them off their land. He shuts them down. He doesn't give them any resources that are, he's the gatekeeper for all the money that's coming in from the federal government. He puts out these phony numbers that there's over 1,100 members of the tribe, which he's been doing for 20-something years. And obviously there's just not that many people in the tribe. There's just not that many in there.
Yeah, he does that.
There never were. There weren't 20, 25 years ago, but he does that to get money. So
right.
Really
he does that to get more money.
Government.
You're right.
Right. So the money comes to him, and we've heard that some of Melvin's relatives do take the money. I mean, these people don't forget, these people were discriminated against. They live poorly. They live in broken down trailers. They live in very modest ways. And he gives them $4,000 a month, some of them, if you agree with them. If you don't agree with them, you get nothing. And but this is millions of dollars coming in from the federal government that he controls. And one of the things that Melvin will tell you, and I'll have him come on and you can talk about what they call treaty cloth, because New York is a lot different than the western states as far as the Indians. And the treaty clause is when the federal government started intervening with New York State, they promised that to keep their land, and particularly the Treaty of 1842, which is the treaty that covers the land where Melvin is. Each year they would come in and they would present this treaty cloth. It was more. It really wasn't worth as much as it was a ceremonial event to show that they had control over the land and that their treaty was being honored. And so there's lots of photos from the 40s, the 50s, and the 60s, even when the treaty cloth was delivered and it was an annual event. And now Halberter just completely cut that off. He padlocked the longhouse. He's not even eligible to be in the longhouse.
What does that mean? What does that mean? I mean,
Yeah.
what is the significance of padlocking the longhouse?
Well, the longhouse is the traditional government of the original Haudenosaunee, or as they are called, Iroquois. The original Haudenosaunee had this longhouse-style government, and there's the traditional longhouse, which Halberter took over, padlocked it, so they don't even meet in the longhouse. The Grand Council, which is the 6 great tribes, the 6 nations of the original Indians from across New York State, meet in the Grand Council up in Onondaga, which is one of the, there's the Senecas, Cayugas, Onondagas, Oneidas, and Mohawks. There are the Tuscaroras, but that's another kind of link in the chain. They all meet at the Grand Council. They speak in the native language, and you have to be what they call a condoled chief to be able to meet in there, and 100% Indian. Halberter is not even permitted in this, yet he controls and manipulates basically everything that has to do with many of these Native American tribes. So that's another issue. But so the treaty clause has been cut off. There's no preservation. He's promised, I have lots of papers that you can see them all on melvinphillipsstory.com. The promise of his attorney that we will never interfere with the affairs of Melvin's band of Indians, which are specifically recognized in the treaty of, the Buffalo Creek Treaty, and also again in the treaty with the Orchard Party Oneidas, which is what he is in 1842, and codified in New York State law in 1869. They said they will not interfere with their roles and they will not interfere with their government. But of course they've eviscerated them. And in the most recent deal, Halberter's people, using the state government and local officials who have, mercenary interests, have come in and they've literally said, we're going to remove Melvin from his land. I mean, they're going to evict him. And he's very worried about that. He thinks that Halberter needs his land to legitimize himself. So that's what we're trying to prevent.
What's so significant about the land that it brings him legitimacy?
the essence of the treaty state. So in the old days, so many of what happened in the original, I'll try to be really quick with this. In 1788, the tribes sold all of their land to the state of New York, and in exchange for what they call a use right reservation, which is kind of the beginning of the term reservation. So by that, they had a possessory interest in this land to hunt and fish forever, as long as they did not leave the land. So that's kind of the essence. As long as you don't leave the land, you can stay there. And that's what Melvin's, ancestors are all like, don't leave, don't ever leave, they'll take it from you. And that's a condition. So what ended up happening, a lot of the Indians got scattered. The federal government interfered during the removal acts of the 1800s. They created some land in Wisconsin for the Oneidas, so you'll hear the Wisconsin Oneidas. There's a lot of other people. They came and left, and so you'll hear Melvin was one of his family with what they call the home parties. The home parties were the Indians that stayed. And so what they did is they said, we have a bunch of people that didn't leave. They don't want to leave. So that's when they did the Treaty of 1842 to keep that, that was preserve that land for them as long as they stay in the land. So that is why their home parties, they stay in the land, and they're pure full Oneidas who have been completely treaty compliant. So in come, basically the squatters and the people like the Halberter who come in from probably Canada and other areas. Some of them are Oneidas, but they're not really what they call tribal Oneidas. They came as individuals, and I've proven that Halberter is actually not Oneida, according to my records. He can disprove me, but he refuses to do that. Instead of trying to disprove me, he just says I'm a racist.
Yeah, well, let me tell you,
really?
he's not an Indian, because he would have shut you up a long time ago. You've been saying this for a long time. So he's not an Indian. He's a fake. He's a fraud. He's just a big fat white guy.
And these name changers, they come after a guy like our friend Mark, and they come after him and tell him to take DNA tests and things like that. I mean, where is Halberter's DNA test? Where is his enrollment card?
Well, I'd like to see that. But see, he gets insulated by the media here, and he gets insulated by politicians here. And the media, what I've been doing is I've been fighting this for so long, and we got after him. In 2013, and we made some headway, but the media completely, went after me, accused me of being a racist, and Halberter paid people to go out. And
well, let's settle that, Claudia. Are you racist? Are you racist against Native?
I just gave up, my entire personal life to help this guy and his family and to preserve this culture and to help these people. I mean, it's absurd. And no, of course I'm not. But one of the things, I'm with Melvin, we constantly, I'm with him a lot, as much as I can be. Lately, I haven't seen a lot of him because he's had some issues up at the house. And, I can't harass him all day long. He sleeps a lot, and he likes to watch NASCAR. So he's in his 70s. Plus, I do have to work. I have a job as a lawyer. I own a business, and I'm also a member of the state assembly. So I'm pretty busy. But anyway, what happened is one day we're looking at pictures of Halberter. So I didn't really know Halberter in the old days. I've only seen him now, and we pulled out this picture from 1998, and that's where you described him looking like the fat white guy. And I was like, that's what Halberter used to look like?
Oh,
so even I was like, holy cow. So Melvin looked at him and he goes, what's he wearing that stupid suede jacket for? He looks more like Davy Crockett than he does an Indian.
Right.
And I was like, Melvin, Davy Crockett killed Indians. And he's like, well, that's what he looks like. That's what he's doing to me. And so I don't know, it was just in my mind. And then I just kept seeing all this, this fake tan. Obviously he's had some kind of plastic surgery. He's had his hair is shoe polished black now, and it was silver in 1998. Fine, that's okay.
He wears that stupid hat.
Not too many men do that unless they're movie stars or TV people. But that's okay. I don't hold that against them. But I hold against a guy who's out there who violates everything that we care about as far as, rights and caring for people. And of all the people in the world to accuse me of being a racist and accuse the Redskins of being a racist, this guy is insulting. And there is racism. There's pernicious racism in our society. And to call out these phony racist situations really undermines and is dangerous to us trying to eradicate and get rid of racism. To me, he's doing the opposite. He's calling racism because he's using it as a political tool, not because he's trying to improve our society.
Whether he's Native or not, And I'm guessing not, because I see him as racist against Native people. I really do. I mean,
with that opening that casino after Frank Baum.
Yeah.
Oh, I know.
Who called
really.
for the
And then,
genocide
by the way,
of all
going
Indians?
back, here he goes attacking the Redskins, and then he turns around and then he says, "Oh well, you know, but Frank Baum apologized." I'm like, no. You are so mercenary and greedy that you will do anything to promote Chittenango to make money. And so you name it after, you know, the famous Wizard of Oz. And that's what you're doing. It has nothing to do with you forgiving Frank Baum. You know, I mean,
Right.
he's just a phony, as we know.
And if Snyder had handed him a few millions and said, "Get out of my face," he probably would have never messed with him, you know. And
well, I
really
think that he's such a megalomaniac. I think he thinks he's going to be like, he wants to put himself on the world stage. He's made so much money, built so many people. I think it's really more of, you know,
this guy thinks he's like Martin Luther King or something.
Right. He thinks he's going to be the leader, even though it's all phony and false. You know, it's an insult to Martin Luther King, you know, who was a true, you know, hero of our nation. You know, somebody who really stood for peace. And I mean, this guy's just a phony. That's what I'm trying to point out. That's what I'm trying to say. But I think I got under his skin, and so he stuck all his nasty Twitter people all started writing all these like foul things about me, and they were attacking me on Twitter, and you know, I screenshotted and sent some of them to you guys. But I mean, this is the kind of guy that, this isn't leadership. This is terrible. Why didn't he give Melvin Phillips his land? I said, you can have all your money you want. Melvin Phillips doesn't want a dime. He just wants that land cut out.
Right.
You know, why can't he do that? Why can't he do that for this guy?
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing. But, you know, it's really, it's just, I just look at the guy as such a fake, and I needled him a little bit. You know, I said, look, he may have some native blood in him, maybe from Canada. He's clearly not an Oneida. He's clearly not eligible to be dominating and ruling over the Oneidas and using this false power. Well, actually, he has no power, but because nobody enforces the law, he gets to do whatever he wants.
Claudia, I'm just gonna. I'm gonna read your tweet, and then I just want to read something that this Kelly Abdo supposedly said to this phony newspaper, this Utica, what is it, Utica Observer Dispatch.
Who's Kelly Abdo?
Native spokeswoman Kelly Abdo. Who knows? Our nation spokeswoman Kelly Abdo. So it's
for Halberner?
It is a sad day when someone. Oh, hold on. I'm going to read this in whiny voice. It's a sad day when someone attacks another person's skin color. And this is what your tweet said. Spray tan Ray looks like Davy Crockett here, not Oneida. Oops, that's because he isn't Oneida. Now, I have to point out, you didn't really make fun of his skin color. You made fun of his orange tan color.
Well, I didn't make it. Had nothing to do with his race. It had to do with it was pointing out that he's a fake.
Right.
Yeah.
He's spray tanning. You know, it's like, well, let me tell you something. There's a story that was run, and I put it up in a British newspaper. It runs all the time. You'll see newspapers running stories of Michael Jackson. You know, when he was 10, when he was 20, when he was 30, when he was, you know, all the way through his life, and how this terrible transformation of how, you know, he turned into something because of bad plastic surgery. You know, they did stuff to his skin. Now, by this newspaper running this transformation of Michael Jackson, are they racist?
Right.
Because he's an African American man.
And that's what I joked about on a post this week. I said in 5 more years he'll look like Michael Jackson of the 1970s because he's doing it in reverse here.
Right. I mean, it's crazy. He's doing it because he's trying to fool people.
I know.
Actually, I don't even know if he's trying to make himself look Native American. I think he's trying to make himself look appealing to young women because you don't have all that plastic surgery and all that Botox and all that stuff and darken your hair and hang out in a nightclub where he supposedly hangs out with all these very, very young women. He now has a very young woman who he's fathered a child with. The kid's like 5 years old. This guy's 65. You know, which I don't hold that against him, but he's trying to appeal to a younger generation. It's vanity.
Doesn't he have some sons that are criminals?
He has a bunch of kids. I don't know where they all are,
okay.
but I think they're
Well, somebody
I
told
don't
us
even know
that.
where they are. I've never met any
Somebody
of them. I
told
don't
us
know who
that,
they
right,
are.
Dan?
We read it.
Yeah, he has 5 or
yeah.
6 kids from his first wife, I believe. One thing other people don't know, he's also a Seventh-day Adventist, and I don't really know a lot about that religion, but I know
It's a little off the
involved in
mainstream.
that. Yeah, I don't know how serious he is about it. Anyone who was serious about Christianity wouldn't be doing the very unchristian things he's doing to so many, vulnerable human beings like Melvin and others, his family and hurting other genuine Oneida people. Now, understand there are people that are even Melvin's relatives who have taken the money and who will do whatever Halberter wants them to. Otherwise, where would these people be? Many of them would be poor.
Right.
It's
Some of
not
them
been
could
an
be
easy
dead.
time for a lot of natives in our area. They have been discriminated against. I mean, Melvin was clearly discriminated against. Now, he's fought the fight, and he's as charming as can be, but he's had a rough road in his life, and it's not easy in this situation because New York is different. When I was in Arizona, everywhere you look, there's evidence of natives. You can go, there's all these preservation of sites and people and culture. That's not the same in New York. There's very few people left.
I know.
And one of the interesting things I think it was Dan.
Well, it's
and I were
about
talking
400
about this
years
the other
older
night.
than out here. So as far as
we were
the
pretty
colonists,
old too, but it was but a lot of it. So it's interesting. So the migration, the Iroquois or the Haudenosaunee, as they like to be called, because Iroquois was not. The Haudenosaunee actually came down through Canada. They were not the original inhabitants of New York. The Algonquin tribe was actually there before the Haudenosaunee.
Right.
And I find it interesting that, you mentioned that the actual name Redskins comes from some Algonquin traditions where they put red dyes on their face to go into, battle. And that was where the name Redskins came from. It didn't really come from the color of their skin.
Right.
And I thought that was really interesting because the Algonquins, I sort of tease Melvin every once in a while because occasionally there'll be a discovery of some remains. We'll find a grave site or a burial site, and they'll pull it up and they'll say, well, these are Algonquins.
Right.
Very ancient. They're not necessarily Haudenosaunee or Oneida.
Yeah.
And I always tease him, and I say, what about this, Melvin? He goes, we killed all those people.
Claudia, can we?
Anyway.
We wanted to take up. Can you stay on for after our break? Can you come back on?
Sure, I can say a few more minutes. I'm all right.
Yeah. Stay with us because I want to talk about that fire, Dan, where they blocked them.
Oh, okay.
So with that, we're going to take a short break. But let me tell you, these name changers.
You can't handle the truth. Thank you.
We're back. That was Mick Jagger and the Rolling Stones playing Gimme Shelter with the beautiful Lisa Fisher. She's a wonderful singer, and she lives in New York, and she tours with the Stones. I've been touring with them for 20-some years, and I met her and seen her sing, and she's a really nice lady. So with that, Claudia, are you there?
I'm here. I'm still here.
Okay. Dan, why don't you and Claudia talk about that situation where Hal Britter blocked these people out when there was a fire?
Yeah, go ahead and tell us about that, Claudia.
Yeah, so what's this? This is something in the earlier days. Hal Britter had a propensity for being involved in violent behavior. We actually have a receipt that we received that he purchased AK-47s before there was a vote. The federal government came in and, the vote of the United People, who to put in charge, and all of a sudden these guys came in with AK-47s after the ballots were completed, stole a ballot box, and off they went. And the federal government just stood there going, what do we do? No ballot box. We can't do anything with the vote. And there was, we have a receipt that 2 days earlier, one of the gun shops, 2 AK-47s were purchased by a guy named Arthur Raymond Halberter, who is Ray Halberter. This is a while ago, so this is how he was able to, this is just all part of his grand plan to take charge and to create this whole thing for himself. He tells this story, and it's a very tragic tale of how discriminated and how horrible the whites were, that his aunt and uncle were on the United property in Madison County, and this is not where Melvin's land is. This is in a different county, and it's the famous 32 acres, and that the police and the fire just sat and let the people die. And he tells this very dramatic story about, they let them die because they were racist and they hated Indians, and he can still smell the burning flesh and all that. So that's his version of the story. The truth of the matter, and it was set straight by our former Madison County District Attorney, Neil Rose, who'd been fighting Halberter for years, and he wrote a very interesting editorial, which we have up on melvinphillipsstory.com. And Neil Rose told the story about how, he calls it the big lie, and how Ray Halberter likes to tell, weave a web of lies to fit his narrative. And the truth of the matter is there was a lot of violence, and Halberter encouraged people to attack and go after the police whenever they were called to anything going on in the United Territory. And they were very afraid to go on there because they were afraid of people getting hurt or killed. And Halberter encouraged this kind of violence. And so one night, one of the trailers was on fire, and it was his aunt and uncle. And Neil Rose describes the tears of the police and the firemen, who were volunteers, who were not allowed to go on the United property to save these people because of Ray Halberter's continued violence against the people who were there trying to help them. And so this story, which that's the truth of the matter, he caused this with his own violence, was really the people wanted to save them. And even Melvin remembers this whole horrible scene, and the people who were devastated by not being able to go on the territory and being threatened by violence to go and save the lives of these people. Why didn't Halberter go and save these people? That's my question. So he tells this horrible story. But
this guy's so crazy. How does he even get away with that?
Well, he does. And by the way, I've tried to get in touch with Neil Rose. Now, everybody is so afraid of him. Everyone that's ever stood up to him, everyone's gone underground. I mean, they're afraid of his ex-wife has called me and said, it's not going to be Ray because he's a coward. It's going to be one of his minions. They're going to run you off the road. They're going to get people to go after you. I have some Hamilton College professor who's attacking me and threatening me now, who's one of Halberter's minions. I mean, he's got tentacles all over. And I'm literally being harassed just because, they're accusing me of whatever the narrative he wants.
You said
all
spoke.
I can say is, why doesn't somebody just ask him, prove that you're enough?
Show us your census number.
You may be right. Maybe he's right. Just prove me. Show it.
He isn't. No, he's not. And that's his tactics. He's just a big thug and a bully, and they go around intimidating people, and they because he's a billionaire, he can get away with it.
Yeah, exactly. Anyone who agrees with him It's just pure racial politics. It's the only argument he has, and I can't believe it's still working.
Well, Claudia,
I can't believe people are still buying it.
Claudia, you have hours on this guy. Would you come back on the show again? I mean, we're about out of time.
Sure, I'd love to. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Anyway, but please go. If they go to Melvin Phillips Story, all one word.com, there's all kinds of documents there.
Okay.
My National Archives documents are there that show that his great-great-grandmother was not an Oneida.
MelvinPhillipsStory.com.
Yeah, Melvin Phillips, PHILLIPS, and then another S, TORY.com.
Okay,
and we've
great.
got tons of documents. We have references to Kevin Gover.
And we're going to be posting some of this stuff on our site throughout the week.
Get it to us, because that's what Dan does, and he's very good at that.
Put the link right on there, and there's all kinds of good stuff there. We've got documents. We've got Neil Rose's letter that I just told you that it's kind of hard. A lot of this stuff's hard to find because it was before things were online. So we've got a pretty good archive going.
Okay,
so.
well, we'll stay in touch. We're running out of time here, but thank you for coming on.
Thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Keep up the fight.
Yeah, we'll keep up the fight, and then we'll stay in touch with you. And thanks again. God bless. I just want Hal Britter, Lancaster School Board, and all these phony activists to know.
You tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear?
And that's all the time we have for tonight.
That's all we got.
Next
folks.
week's we're gonna go back to Lancaster, but
nah, man, that ain't me. I'm from Buffalo.
and we're gonna get an update from there what's going on.
Thanks for listening, folks. And again, if you like our show, tell everybody it's spreading. And if you really like our show, think about being a sponsor. I just want to do a quick thank you to our new listeners, Shell, Rosita, Mary, Vita, and Dr. Tony. With that being said, tell us why we're here.
Kicking ass and saving names, Ambassador.
That's it.
Thank you for listening to The Real Deal. Tune in to The Real Deal with the Ambassador and Danny Q every Wednesday at 5 p.m. and on demand 24/7 right here on the Double Wide Network.